Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Bailey's Best. Brian Bailey with Zach Kaplan. All kinds of things to talk about. Let's start with college basketball. Let's start with March Madness. Michigan wins the national championship. I thought it was a good game. Wasn't a thing of beauty, was it?
No, it won't be one I remember forever. You think about when Villanova and Carolina played 10 years ago, and some of the other national championships we've had. 83, 2019. I'm sure you will remember forever. It wasn't one of those, but the Big Ten's drought is over. After 26 years, there's finally a national champion in basketball from the Big Ten Conference.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't a thing of beauty. It was a lot of defense. I was surprised just that every shot was contested around the basket. And UConn got a steal late in the game. I think they were down 4, and they went to the basket. And if they had made that shot, I thought they really had a chance. But you gotta give credit to Danny Hurley. I mean, you may not like him, but he's a heck of a ball coach, and just what Michigan was able to do with 5 transfers, and that's what we have in college basketball now. Every year, your roster is going to be a lot different, and I think that they were able to pull it off.
They were. It's funny to think that Dusty May was coaching in Minji's a few years ago and in the American Conference, but he took that formula. He went to a Final Four at Florida Atlantic, who had never known any basketball success, at least on that level, prior to his arrival, and haven't had any much of that after he left either. But it's the way that he kind of came in. They have resources. It's Michigan. They got plenty of money. They always will. But he brought in the right guys. Axel Lendeborg is another American Conference guy that he coached against that UAB and Pirates played against. And it was the team that you weren't sure. In November, they were dominating everybody. They were killing teams by 40 at that Players Era Festival in Vegas around Thanksgiving. And I wasn't sure they could sustain that for the whole year. But to their credit, I mean, they had just so much talent, and they're the national champions.
And I thought the tournament as a whole was really just another, just a magical month of March. March is, I remember when COVID came in and they wiped the tournament out, and how devastating that was. And I think every year when the tournament starts, I think, thank the good Lord that, hey, we got an NCAA tournament to watch and just be a part of. And it's just, I hated to see Duke lose like they did, but, Connecticut did what they had to do and pulled off the upset there. But Michigan's your national champion. And then we've got all kinds of things going on as far as coaching deals. Dusty May was right in the running, we thought, for the North Carolina job. And then he, says, hey, I'm not interested, tells Michigan. And, usually when a coach is hired, word leaks out, or he's one of the top 3 or top 4. I always say this a lot of times. When Skip Holtz was hired at East Carolina, when Mike Houston was hired at East Carolina, his name was the first name. Skip, there was a couple other ones, but when Mike Houston was hired at East Carolina, his name rose to the top. He was the number 1 candidate. I don't think anybody else was interviewed. Everybody agreed he was the guy. It didn't turn out the way we thought it might, but still, he was the guy. But in this situation, with Michael Malone being hired at North Carolina, I mean, to me, it came out of nowhere. I think Ken Watlington told us that he saw on one of the Tar Heel boards that he was like 9th or 10th as far as possible candidates, but I was surprised.
The only place I really saw it before it was announced, Brendan Marks of The Athletic had an article, and he was like, there was a paragraph, the very last paragraph, the entire article, another name to look out for. And now, maybe some of the breadcrumbs were there. They did have him. Jones Angel and Adam Lucas had him on the Carolina Insider podcast. He was around earlier in the fall during volleyball season. His daughter plays for the Tar Heel volleyball team. And, in some ways, I guess the signs were there, but never really, because he wasn't their first choice. He was really like their 7th or 8th choice. But that's kind of how these coaching searches can go sometimes. Penn State football is one that was compared a little bit to this coaching search, and obviously had a front row seat as a, highly sought after coaches use that coaching search as a stalking horse to get more money and contract extensions. And that happened for several coaches across the country in this Carolina search. And we'll see how it works out with Malone. He can coach the X's and O's. I don't think there's any question about that. He's won an NBA championship. Nikola Jokic spoke very highly of him, but can they get a roster together?
Does Jokic have any eligibility left? That's the issue.
Never played in college, so he could follow him.
But he does have some eligibility left.
Well, we'll see.
In the CBS Sports bracket pool, okay, I did one just for fun, and they said, I don't think this is right. They said I finished in 1,691,789th place. daggone.
Out of how many?
I mean, that's terrible. But I mean, I thought I did.
If that's out of 20 million people, it's pretty good.
Well, that's true. I did not think of it like that. Yeah. So there's 20
Out of
million.
100 million people, it's really good.
I think there was 1 billion people in this pool, and I finished way up there. But
so it's two to class F4, right?
1,691,789th place. That's just unbelievable.
I had Michigan and Arizona in my Final Four. I had Duke. We all know how that went. But then Houston, couldn't get it done at home.
Yeah, and that was kind of surprising. I thought.
Should I check and see where I finished in the ESPN pool?
I think you should while we're sitting here and while we're entertaining the masses. See if what your number ended up.
It's got to be pretty far down there, but it's pretty ironic too. We talk about Carolina, right? Elliot Cadeau in that national championship had a big role to play, and he was big for them all season. And I was kind of waiting for the game where he would fall apart. 7.1 million, by the way. So I was in the 7.
You were 7 millionth?
Yeah, I was in the 7
Wow,
million.
I don't feel so bad about my million.
74th percentile. So yeah, I was way back there. You should feel a lot better about yourself.
I feel a whole lot better now. The numbers
there you go.
Elliot Cadeau, the most outstanding player for the Final Four, the national championship game, he played well. He got off to a good start, got in a little bit of foul trouble, and then came back in the second half, and he hit one key three, had a basket, and when he got fouled, was key in the game. And really, he was a steadying force, I think, for a Michigan team that didn't shoot it that well, but neither did UConn. So,
and it speaks to maybe some of the issues that people had with, Hubert Davis at Carolina, that he wasn't that player that Dusty May got him to be at Michigan. He had better pieces around him, you could argue, but they got more out of him, and he's the national champion. All
right, let's take a break. This is Bailey's Best, talking anything and everything with sports. That's Zach Kaplan. I'm Brian Bailey. Back with more on our show right after this. All right, welcome back to Bailey's Best. Brian Bailey with Zach Kaplan. Let's talk Pirate baseball. And they got the walk-off loss to Duke, and then they lost 2 out of 3 to UTSA. But since then, they've played pretty good baseball. In the Charlotte series, they had to come from behind winning game 2. And then game 3, 11 runs in the bottom of the first inning. That was something.
Yeah, I texted you. I'm like, am I good? Should I go get some high school baseball too?
Well, the funny thing, one of our best friends was going to meet us, and she's notoriously late for everything. And so she got there in the third, and her first comment was, this game's kind of boring. And I said, well, if you'd have been here in the first inning, it wasn't so boring, now was it? I know she'll never see this, but I thought it was funny.
You may have to send it to her. But as far as the team goes, I mean, Cliff Godwin said he couldn't remember a week where he got walked off twice in the same week in his entire career. And to mentally bounce back from that is hard. And this is a team that was kind of, you think about it, before those 4 games, I mean, 16, 12, and 1. I mean, below their standard, certainly below the standard that kind of fans had. And sometimes it's all it takes is just kind of one, the one series like that where they kind of came together Monday, had a conversation Cliff kind of alluded to with his leadership, and the bats got going. They scored 56 runs, I believe, in 4 games, either 53 or 56, and they just they continue to put the barrel on the baseball. And one of the keys to that, Davin Whitaker had another big week. He's kind of been a guy who's, in my opinion, emerged out of nowhere. Maybe not in Cliff Godwin's mind, but in mine, he's hitting 2 in the order now. We're taping this before they play Duke coming up on Tuesday night. So we're not going to talk about that, but it's been a kind of a revelation at the plate for ECU.
And you look at it, things haven't gone East Carolina's way on the diamond, but they're 6-3 in conference and only a game out of first place. UAB has won a bunch of games. I think they've won 9 in a row. They've been white hot. They're 22-10. UTSA 22-10. East Carolina 20-12-1 overall. But the Blazers at 7-2, the Roadrunners and Pirates at 6-3, and then you got South Florida, Wichita State at 5-4. You got Rice Chilling at 4-5, Charlotte 3-6, Memphis 3-6, and then Florida Atlantic at 2-7. But any weekend you go out there, you've got a chance of losing 1 or maybe 2.
And you think about. So that winning streak, by the way, with UAB started at that Sunday game at ECU that they won to, avoid a sweep. So ECU at least has their series out of the way, although they didn't win it with UTSA. They at least have played both UAB and UTSA. So now, you got teams that are all below you at the moment in conference play still the rest of the year. But they got to, obviously keep treading water. South Florida is a team that's right on the edge of the at-large pool right now. East Carolina, by way of their 4-0 week, is now back in discussion for an at-large bid. They got their RPI up to 29.
29.
And it's a huge jump, and one that, frankly, I didn't think they were capable of. But, they certainly have these big non-conference games left, one with Duke, 2 with NC State, and 1 with Campbell, who's also pretty high in the RPI rankings. So East Carolina has a chance to, still put themselves safely in the at-large field, and they've really improved their stock with that 4-0 week. Came at a good time.
Yeah, East Carolina with that RPI of 29, and you look at some of the teams, above them around the area. Coastal Carolina at 13, and the North Carolina Tar Heels at 14, and those are those key games early in the season that can really help your RPI. But the Pirates weren't playing as good a baseball as they're playing right now when they played those games. But they've got a big series coming up this weekend, and it's with the pitching situation they have. They've got some arms, they've got some injuries though, and I think that's the big concern.
Yeah, it is, and that's going to be something you got to keep an eye out for. Luke Payne had a great start Thursday night, able to give them 4 innings, and you gave up 2 runs, but for a guy that you weren't expecting, I think I've expect him to go 3 maybe, and he's able to give you 4 and hold Charlotte in check. You're going to need guys like that to continue stepping up, and maybe some of those unsung heroes now with Van Kempen probably out till the end of the month, and I don't think we see Weber again this season.
Yeah, I don't think so either. That's the word over there, is that we won't see him again, and that's a shame. Freshman,
he's so good,
and just and that's what you need in that role. You need your ace on Friday night, but you really need that. And the Pirates had it set up. Those 3 guys, but Norby hasn't been Norby-like a lot of times. It wasn't that way against Charlotte for sure. So he's still working on some things. And the way they do the tournament now has changed. The format has changed. So the top 2 seeds get double buys in the thing. So they don't play. I believe, I got to check this out. I think it's Friday they don't play until. I think
if
the
you
tournament
get a 1 or 2
starts.
seed.
Right. The tournament starts on Wednesday, and then you go Thursday. And if you're a 1 or 2, you don't play till Friday, and then the thing ends on Sunday. And what they're trying to do is to save the pitching for the top 2 seeds, because they think those top 2 teams are going to head to the NCAA tournament anyway. And that's been a thing that's hurt East Carolina in the past. You use all your pitching up trying to win that tournament, and it's happened before.
And a lot of years, when ECU hasn't won the American, the team that they still get in with an at-large,
right,
and that conference champion does get in. So you figure you're protecting those 2 teams if the American can be a 2-bid league going forward, and this year certainly has a chance to be.
And if you've ever been to Clearwater, that time of the year, it is hot. I think it's a hot because you're not used to the heat at that point in time. It's it's
like
late
the
May.
Of the sun, probably.
Yeah, it's late May, and you're in Clearwater, Florida, and it's beautiful most time. Now, one year we did go in there, and they had a tropical system right around there, and it was a bizarre week. But usually it's hot, and it's a lot of fun though if you get a chance to go to Clearwater, Florida for the tournament. This is Bailey's Best talking sports. We'll take a break. Back with more on our show after this. All right, welcome back to Bailey's Best. Brian Bailey, Zach Kaplan. Let's talk softball from East Carolina now. And the Pirates had it going until that bizarre weekend when a team came to town that had very few wins and just swept East Carolina. What was that about?
Yeah, UAB came in, and it's been a struggle at the plate for Pirates softball here over the last stretch of time. It was a struggle at the plate as well in that Charlotte series this past weekend, but the Pirates, they score 8 runs total in the 3 games, and they win the series. I mean, not often you can say that.
You look at the UAB. UAB came to town. Weren't they 0-8?
They're
0-9. 0-9 when they got here. Now they're 5-10.
So it looks
so
a
they
little
turned it around
better,
all of a sudden. 'Cause I looked down and I was like, "Who's the bad team?" There, well, it wasn't Memphis; it was UAB. But they're now 5-10, so they've turned things around at the expense of Shane Winkler and company. Winkler's such a good coach, and you hate to see when something like that happens. Pirates are right in the middle of the pack at 8-7, tied with Florida Atlantic and UTSA. Above the Pirates, Wichita State's a game up at 9-6, and then you have South Florida and North Texas both at 11-4. So it looks like a 2-horse race as far as softball goes. And the softball tournament will be held right here at Max Joyner Family Stadium. That'll be a big thrill for Pirate fans and softball fans, because softball is so big in Pitt County and so big in Greenville. The World Series every year in August is a huge deal. And the world kind of looks in on Greenville, North Carolina, which is kind of cool for the softball World Series, Little League Softball World Series. But
I can't can't remember. I mean, I can't imagine they've hosted very often either. And that's a traveling. They don't stay in Clearwater. They go from one site to another every year. Maybe CUSA days they might have gotten to host.
I think they did. I think Tony Paisley and the Pirates hosted. I think it was Conference USA, and I think Paisley and company won it. Tony Paisley is one of the greatest softball players in East Carolina's history. She was a heck of a pitcher. She's in the East Carolina Hall of Fame. I hosted the banquet the night that she was inducted, and she was a great girl. And we miss her because she was. And that's another thing. We've talked about this before. We don't get as much access to the athletes as we used to get.
Yeah.
But we talk to Tony all the time. But now. Even to some of the softball players that are from our area, we don't talk to all that much.
No, and it's part of it. Maybe we need to push for it more, but it's no. Sometimes we do, and it doesn't work out. So I wish it was a little different there.
High school baseball and high school softball. Easter tournaments ruled this past week. There were a couple of weeks ago, there was more Easter tournaments because some school systems had breaks, and this week some school systems had weeks and breaks in this other week. So we've had a lot of that stuff going on, and it's funny because Rose and Pitt County hosting the Pitt County Easter tournament. They're still in conference play too this week, so they're kind of juggling everything. You were at the Rose First Colonial game. Rose didn't play all that well, but they won.
No, and it's been even if RV was sitting in a third chair here, he would tell you the bats are cold right now, and the hitting's been an issue, but the pitching has been really good, and they were able to get a really nice pitching performance and get that win over First Colonial. They had to walk it off over the weekend, I believe, against Yorktown. So you got all these Virginia teams coming down here. It must feel like you're in high school again over there.
Almost.
But it's been a challenge at the plate, but they've had some good pitching. I think they're pretty deep as far as pitching goes, and we've talked about it, you and I, but how good Rose, South Central, and Conley are all at the same time.
That's
Aiden Grifton at the 3A level.
Yeah.
I mean, you have an insane amount of talent, and it's spread out evenly. We talk about open enrollment here in Pitt County, but that's the one sport I feel like it is pretty even. Conley maybe a little more than the other schools, but I think Rose and South will make deep playoff runs. Aiden Grifton right there with them.
Yeah, and I think those games against one another will help them down the road. And any high school coach will tell you, I think they'd rather have that great pitching than have the hitting because
more
a great
in the
pitcher,
playoffs.
in the playoffs especially. So I think when you get down to that point, that's going to be the real key factor, and that'll take us into May as far as the playoffs go. And so we've got a lot of local baseball still to be played in conference. They're about halfway through their conference schedule.
Conley and Rose have not played head-to-head yet.
Right.
Conley has played South Central, and South Central has played Rose.
Right.
So South Central's played both.
Yeah, South Central and took the lumps in both.
Yeah, they did, and it's still kind of figuring it out. Their best pitcher has not been pitching of late. Had an injury, so they're just kind of working back in on the mound. Isaiah James, Duke commit. So we'll see kind of what's next for him.
Yeah, we hope he can get back because he's a talent. I'd like to see him out on the mound.
97,
and he's playing. He's playing, but he's not throwing yet. But 97 at the high school ranks.
Tough to hit.
If I'm getting ready to hit, I'm thinking twice about getting in that batter's box at 97. All right, we'll take one final break to wrap things up on this edition of Bailey's Best right after this. All right, welcome back to Bailey's Best as we wrap up this edition talking Hornets and Hurricanes. And the best news there is we're talking playoffs for both, and that's a rarity.
And especially with the Hornets. And I was thinking about it. How many years really in North Carolina have the Panthers, the Hornets, and the Hurricanes all made the postseason at the same time? It's pretty rare. 2016 is the last time that the Hornets and the Panthers both did it, but I don't think the Hurricanes did, so it's been a while.
All right, the Hornets are 43-36 as we sit here, trying to get up to the sixth spot would be ideal.
Is realistically they could get to the 5. Atlanta's 45-34, so 2 ahead in each column. No games in hand there, but the Hornets they got about 3 games left to go. They've played 79 as we tape this. They're in Boston tonight to take on the current 2 seed Boston Celtics. So that'll be a tough test.
Yeah. And that's one of those games, if Boston decides they don't necessarily need it because they're in their slot.
Pretty set at the 2 seed.
Right.
Yep.
That may play in the favor of the Hornets.
Yeah, that could help them. And the Pistons have clinched the top seed already, and they play Detroit Friday.
And I've never understood the play-in. And the Hornets, obviously, they don't understand it either because they've been in it twice, and they got beat by 40, I think, both times. Yeah. So they don't understand it either. But hopefully they can get up in that slot and not have to play in that play-in type deal.
What's so fun though is it's all rookies. It's all young guys.
They're really good, and they're really good. I mean, it's fun to watch. And
LaMelo's the old man, and he's like 27.
Yeah, and that's hard to believe. All right, let's talk hockey. The playoffs getting ready to start. Hornets wrapping up their regular season, and they've been fun to watch all year. They're really really good. They have a bad night every once in a while, like all teams do, but they're really good.
And the most important thing, like they lost in Ottawa the other night, but nobody got hurt. And
right.
And at this time of the year, they held Stahl out in that game. They held Martinook out. They host the Bruins tonight. Both the North Carolina teams playing Boston teams. So
Boston.
Right up my alley, as you can imagine. Boston teams, one down here, one over there.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, you're right, with 5 games to go, Canes are pretty. They should get the top seed. Tampa Bay and Buffalo are at 102 points. Carolina at 104 entering Tuesday night. So it's pretty neck and neck as far as that goes. But they're set at the top of the Metro. They clinched the division with the win over the Bruins on Tuesday night.
And one of the treats for us as sportscasters in Greenville, North Carolina, is that the Hurricanes treat us really good, and we get a chance to go cover them in the playoffs. The only thing I do worry about, I think the NHL takes over the Stanley Cup credentials, and I don't know how we'll do then, but in the playoffs,
to some contacts in the league
we'll try to do the best we can. But it's so much fun to go and cover them. And you remember last year we were out in the parking lot because the game was still going on. And we knew they had won, but we didn't know how. And some guys are yelling at us in the parking lot. And I was on live. You were over behind the camera laughing because
I'm scrambling. I'm trying to figure out who the heck scored. And it was Aho. And finally someone yelled it over. And that was to win the series against the Devils in the first round.
It really was.
So it was not only just an overtime game winner in the playoffs, it was to advance.
It was big to advance. And I was talking about the highlights, and then we heard the horn start blowing because some people were out in the parking lot, had left early for some reason, but then people started spilling out, and it was a celebration. So,
and you said 42 years. You ever had one like that?
No,
the game winner live as you're on.
And that's the best part about being old. Every time you turn around, something else happens that you've never seen before. Yeah. And so hopefully that will continue. Any closing comments as we get out?
I'm excited. I'm excited to see these playoffs. NBA play-in starts next week. Hornets might not even be in it. And then the Hurricanes start right around the 18th for the playoffs for the NHL.
All right, for Zach Kaplan, I'm Brian Bailey, and that's this week's Bailey's Best. Thanks for watching.